But that is not where he stopped. He did not cling to his own will. He did not seek an easier path. He did not choose comfort over obedience. No, he surrendered. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Do you understand the weight of these words? The Son of God, the one through whom all things were created, bowed his will to the Father. The one who had the power to call down legions of angels to rescue him, the one who could have spoken a word and ended it all, instead chose to obey. And because of that obedience, salvation was made possible for all who believe. The greatest door in all of history, the door to eternal life, was opened, not through striving, not through self-will, but through surrender. If Christ himself, the spotless Lamb of God, submitted to the will of the Father, how much more must we? Yet so many resist. They want the blessings of God, but they refuse to bow their knee. They want the rewards of obedience, but they will not walk in obedience. They want open doors, but they are unwilling to say, "Not my will, but yours be done." This is why so many struggle. They pray, they cry out, they ask for direction, but they do not truly surrender. They hold on to their own plans, their own desires, their own way of doing things. And when God's path does not align with their preferences, they hesitate, they resist, they turn away. They say they want God's will, but what they really mean is they want God to bless their will. But listen to me. There is no true power apart from surrender. There is no lasting favor apart from obedience. If Jesus, the King of Kings, humbled himself in submission to the Father, what makes you think you can walk in authority without first kneeling before God? What makes you think you can have victory without first dying to yourself? What makes you think the doors of heaven will open for you if you are unwilling to walk in the footsteps of Christ? Look at the lives of those whom God has used mightily. Every single one of them had to come to a place of surrender. Abraham had to lay his own son on the altar. Moses had to abandon the wealth of Egypt. David had to flee into the wilderness before wearing the crown. The Apostle Paul had to count all things as loss for the sake of Christ. None of them stepped into their calling by clinging to their own will. Every one of them had to say, "Not my will, but yours be done." And when they did, God moved. When they surrendered, he opened doors that no man could shut. When they bowed in obedience, he lifted them up in due time. When they walked in submission, he poured out his power and favor upon them. You must understand, God is not looking for the talented, the ambitious, or the strong in their own strength. He is looking for the surrendered. He is looking for those who will lay everything down and trust him completely. The world tells you to chase your dreams, to fight for your destiny, to make things happen on your own. But the kingdom of God operates differently. In his kingdom, the way up is down. The way to victory is through surrender. The way to true power is by laying your life at his feet. Some of you have been wrestling with God. You have been holding on to your own plans, afraid to let go, afraid to trust, afraid that if you truly surrender, you will lose everything. But hear this, when you surrender to God, you lose nothing that truly matters and gain everything that does. When you lay down your own will, he gives you something far greater. When you let go, he takes control, and his plans are always better than yours. Jesus showed us the way. He did not just preach about surrender, he lived it. He modeled it. He walked in perfect obedience, even unto death. And because he obeyed, he was exalted above all things. If you want to walk in the power of God, if you want doors to open that no man can shut, if you want to see the impossible become reality, then follow his example. Lay down your will, bow your knee, and say with all your heart, "Not my will, but yours be done." Many people spend their lives banging on doors that were never meant to open. They cry out to God for breakthrough, but they refuse to submit to his leading. They ask for blessings, but they ignore his voice when he tells them to turn away from certain paths. And when doors remain shut, they grow frustrated, questioning why God isn't answering their prayers. But listen to me, God is not silent. He is not ignoring you. He is protecting you. Some doors are shut because they lead to destruction. Some doors are locked because they are not part of God's plan for your life. And yet, in pride and stubbornness, many people continue to fight against the will of God, determined to walk through doors that were never meant for them. But what if they truly surrendered? What if they stopped chasing their own desires and allowed God to lead them? What if, instead of trying to force open doors, they simply trusted the one who holds the keys? When you surrender to God, the doors that need to remain shut will stay shut, and the doors that are meant to open will swing wide before you. This is not about luck, and it is not about personal effort. It is about divine alignment, walking in step with God so that his plans unfold in his perfect timing. Look at Jonah. God called him to Nineveh, but he ran in the opposite direction. He boarded a ship to flee from the presence of the Lord, but what happened? A storm came, the sea raged, and Jonah was thrown into the depths. That was a door God refused to open. Jonah thought he could make his own path, but God blocked his way. And when Jonah finally repented, when he finally aligned his heart with God's will, the right door opened. He was released from the belly of the fish, and he walked straight into the calling that had been prepared for him from the beginning. Some of you are fighting storms in your life because you are running toward doors God has shut. You are frustrated, exhausted, and weary because you are trying to make things happen in your own strength. But hear this, if God has closed a door, it is for your good. If He has kept you from stepping into something, it is because He has something better. The problem is not that God is not answering, you just may be asking for the wrong thing. And yet, when you fully surrender, when you lay down your own desires and submit to His will, the right doors will open. Not by force, not by manipulation, but by the sovereign hand of God. And when He opens a door, no man, no devil, no circumstance can shut it. Look at the life of Paul. He had his own plans. He was a man of great intellect, influence, and authority. Before his encounter with Christ, he was convinced that he was doing the right thing, persecuting the church, shutting down what he believed was heresy. But on the road to Damascus, God stopped him. The door Paul was running toward was slammed shut, and another door was opened, a door to preach the gospel to the Gentiles, a door to bring light to those who had never known the truth. Paul could have resisted. He could have clung to his old ways. He could have fought against the will of God. But instead, he surrendered. He let go of his own plans, and because of that, God led him through doors that changed the world. He stood before kings, he preached in synagogues and public squares, he wrote letters that continue to shape the church today. None of this would have happened if Paul had insisted on walking through the wrong door. Some of you are wondering why you feel stuck, why nothing seems to be moving forward, why the opportunities you desire are not opening up. But I ask you, are you seeking God's will or your own? Have you laid everything down before Him and truly said, Lord, not my will but yours be done? Because if you do, if you truly surrender, the doors that lead to your divine purpose will open, and no power on earth will be able to stop it. God is not withholding good things from you. He is positioning you. He is aligning you with His perfect plan. He is preparing you for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right season. And when that time comes, when you are where He wants you to be, no man will be able to stand in your way. The doors will open and you will walk through them with the full authority and favor of the Lord. A life fully surrendered to God is a life that cannot be stopped. The world may try to stand in your way. People may oppose you. The enemy may throw every obstacle before you. But when you are walking in obedience to the will of God, nothing can prevent His purpose from being fulfilled in your life. You do not have to force your way through life. You do not have to fight for opportunities. You do not have to live in fear of what lies ahead. Because the God who called you is the God who will establish you. Too many people live in fear. They worry about their future. They worry about their finances, their relationships, their careers. They feel the pressure of having to figure everything out on their own. But hear me. When you are surrendered to God, you do not have to live in fear. You do not have to carry the weight of trying to control everything. Because it is no longer about your plans, it is about His. It is no longer about your strength, it is about His power working through you. Look at Moses. He had no power in himself. He was not a great speaker. He was not a mighty warrior. By human standards, he was unqualified to lead a nation. And yet, he was chosen by God. Not because of his abilities, not because of his wisdom, but because he was surrendered. When he stood before the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind him, there was no way forward. There was no path of escape. But Moses did not need a way, he needed God. And because he was walking in obedience, the sea parted before him. The impossible became possible. And not only did he walk through on dry ground, but every enemy that pursued him was destroyed. This is what happens when you are fully surrendered. When you walk in God's will, what seemed impossible will become reality. What once held you back will no longer have power over you. What once threatened to destroy you will be defeated before your eyes. And not because of your effort, but because of the one who goes before you. Some of you are still holding back. You want to trust God, but you are afraid to let go. You want to step into His plans, but you are still clinging to your own. But let me ask you, who do you trust more? Yourself or God? Who knows what is best for your life? You are the one who created you. When you fully surrender, when you let go of control and place your life in His hands, He will take you places you never imagined. He will do things through you that you never thought possible. Look at Esther, a simple Jewish girl taken into the palace of the king. She could have remained silent. She could have hidden in fear. But she understood that she was placed there for a purpose. And when the moment came, she surrendered. She put her life on the line, declaring, "If I perish, I perish." And because of that surrender, a whole nation was saved. This is the power of a life yielded to God. It is not a life free from trials. It is not a life without challenges. But it is a life of victory, because when you walk in obedience, God Himself fights for you. When you surrender, He opens doors that no man can shut. When you trust Him completely, you will walk in divine favor, and nothing will be able to stop the plans He has for you. There is no safer place than in the center of God's will. The world may offer shortcuts. The enemy may tempt you with an easier path. Your own heart may pull you toward comfort and security. But the greatest blessing, the greatest strength, the greatest authority comes when you fully submit to the will of God. He does not just bless you, He establishes you. He does not just give you opportunities, He gives you divine purpose. He does not just lead you, He walks with you every step of the way. And when you live this way, when you surrender completely, when you trust Him without hesitation, no force in heaven or on earth will be able to stand against you. You stand at a crossroads. Before you are two paths, one where you continue striving, fighting, and chasing after doors that may never open, and then another where you surrender fully to the will of God, trusting Him to lead you in His perfect timing. The choice is yours. Will you keep relying on your own strength, your own plans, your own desires? Or will you lay everything down and say, "Lord, not my will, but yours be done"? Listen to me, God is faithful. He is not a man that He should lie. When He says He will open doors, He means it. When He says He will make a way, He will do it. But you must be willing to trust Him. You must be willing to surrender. You must be willing to walk in obedience, even when you do not understand, even when the road is difficult, even when it requires sacrifice. The doors that God opens, no man can shut. The favor He gives, no one can take away. The calling He has placed on your life cannot be stopped if you are willing to submit to His will. So stop striving, stop wrestling, stop chasing after what was never meant for you. Instead, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Walk in obedience, surrender completely. And when you do, you will see the hand of God move in ways you never imagined. Say this with all your heart: "Lord, not my will, but yours be done." Say it, mean it, live it. And watch as every door He has destined for you swings open before you. Look at Abraham. God called him to leave everything behind, to walk away from his homeland, his security, his comfort, and go to a land that he did not know. That was surrender. He had no roadmap, no clear destination, only the promise that God would be with him. And because of that surrender, because he trusted in the Lord's will over his own, God opened doors that no man could shut. He made Abraham the father of nations, not because Abraham fought for it, but because he obeyed. Look at Jesus in the garden. If anyone had the right to choose his own path, it was him. And yet, in his moment of greatest agony, he prayed, "Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." That was the ultimate surrender. And what happened? Because he submitted to the Father's will, the greatest door of all was opened. The door of salvation for all who believe. Do you see it now? The power is not in forcing your way through life. The power is in surrendering to the one who controls all things. When you stop trying to open doors in your own strength and start trusting in Him, the right doors will open before you, and no one, no man, no enemy, no circumstance will be able to shut them. Obedience is not an option for those who seek the favor of God. It is the very foundation upon which His blessings rest. Many cry out for open doors, for breakthroughs, for divine opportunities, but they refuse to walk in obedience. They want the benefits of God's kingdom without submitting to the King. But listen, God is not fooled by words alone. He searches the heart, and He knows who truly follows Him and who merely seeks His hand while rejecting His authority. The world has twisted the concept of favor. It teaches that success comes from ambition, strategy, and relentless pursuit of personal goals. It tells you that you must seize opportunities, manipulate circumstances, and push yourself ahead of others to be recognized. But God's ways are higher. His favor does not come through manipulation or self-promotion, but through submission to His will. The doors that He opens are not earned by human effort, but by a heart fully surrendered to Him. Look at the lives of those who walked in obedience before the Lord. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and falsely accused in Egypt. By the world's standards, his life should have been a tragedy, but he walked in righteousness. He remained faithful in every season, whether in the pit, the prison, or the palace, and because of his obedience, God elevated him to the highest position in Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. Joseph did not strive to open doors for himself. He simply remained faithful, and in due time, God opened doors no man could shut. Some ask why they struggle, why they knock but no door opens, why they pray but see no breakthrough. But I ask, are you walking in obedience? Have you truly surrendered your life to God's commands? You cannot expect divine favor while living in rebellion. You cannot walk in darkness and expect to be led by the light. You must choose this day whom you will serve. If you serve God, serve Him fully. If you desire His favor, walk in His ways. Many claim to love God, but their actions deny Him. They cry out for blessing, but refuse to turn from sin. They ask for promotion, but lack integrity. They seek prosperity, but neglect holiness. And they wonder why the doors remain shut. But God will not be mocked. He blesses those who fear Him, who honor Him not just with their lips, but with their lives. The favor of God is not a reward for talent or effort. It is the result of a heart that seeks Him above all else. When Solomon became king, God appeared to him in a dream and asked, "What shall I give you?" Solomon did not ask for wealth, power, or long life. He asked for wisdom to lead God's people. And because his heart was right before the Lord, God not only gave him wisdom, but also wealth, honor, and peace beyond measure. His favor was a direct result of his obedience and desire to serve God's purpose rather than his own. But there is a warning. Favor is not permanent if obedience is abandoned. Look at Saul, chosen by God, anointed as king, given every opportunity to walk in divine blessing, but he disobeyed. He allowed pride and fear of man to rule his heart, and what happened? The favor of God departed from him, and his kingdom was torn from his hands. He lost everything, not because of a lack of opportunity, but because he failed to obey. You must understand that God's favor is not about earthly success alone. It is about fulfilling His purpose for your life. The world may offer shortcuts, ways to gain influence, power, and wealth apart from God. But what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? True favor is found in walking in step with the Lord, in living a life that is pleasing to Him, in seeking first His kingdom and His righteousness. When you obey, you do not have to fight for open doors. God Himself will open them for you. You do not have to chase after blessings. Blessings will chase after you. You do not have to strive for success. God will position you in the right place at the right time. When you are faithful in the small things, He will entrust you with greater things. When you live righteously, He will make your path straight. When you seek His will above your own, He will do exceedingly, abundantly more than you could ever ask or imagine. Look at Him in the garden, the weight of the world upon His shoulders, sweat like great drops of blood falling to the ground. He knew what was coming. He knew the suffering that lay ahead, the betrayal, the mockery, the scourging, the nails driven through His hands and feet. He knew the full wrath of God would be poured out upon Him, that He would bear the sin of the world, and in that moment He cried out, "Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." My dear brothers and sisters, listen to me. This is not a game. This is not a suggestion. This is the word of truth, and if you grasp it, every door that has been shut will swing open before you. You may have struggled, you may have labored, you may have cried out in despair, but today I stand here to tell you there is a way. But let me warn you, this is not some magic formula, this is not a trick to get what you want. No, this is about aligning your heart with the truth of God. If you want doors to open, if you want the chains to break, if you want to see the impossible bow before the power of the Almighty, then you must say this, "Lord, not my will, but yours be done." Oh, I know, this is not what you wanted to hear. You wanted something easy, something that would require no sacrifice, no surrender, no brokenness before God. But hear me now. This is the very key that unlocks all things. The moment you stop fighting for your own desires and begin seeking His perfect will, the heavens move on your behalf. Some of you have been knocking on the wrong doors. You have been pleading for God to bless your plans instead of surrendering to His. You cry out for success, but you will not bow in obedience. You ask for favor, but you refuse to walk in righteousness. But when you say, Lord, not my will, but yours be done, the doors you were never meant to walk through will close, and the doors that lead to your divine purpose will open before you. This is what Christ himself said in the garden. Do you not understand? Even the Son of God bowed his knee and submitted to the Father's will. And if he, the spotless Lamb, the King of glory, humbled himself in obedience, how much more must we? I tell you, the moment you truly say this from the depths of your soul, everything will change. Fear will lose its grip. Anxiety will fade. Confusion will be replaced with clarity. And you will walk in the power and authority of one who is led by the Most High. So I ask you, will you surrender today? Will you lay it all down at his feet? Because if you do, nothing, and I mean nothing, will be able to stand in your way. People spend their whole lives chasing after open doors. They strive, they push, they manipulate, and they try to make things happen in their own strength. They knock on every possible door, hoping one will finally swing open and give them what they desire. But what they fail to realize is this: true access, true breakthrough, and true favor do not come from the efforts of man, but from surrender to the will of God. Look at the world around you. Everyone is striving, chasing after success, wealth, influence, and comfort. They believe that if they work harder, think smarter, or position themselves better, they will finally reach their destiny. But many of them, even when they reach the highest levels of success, are still empty, still restless, still searching for something more. Why? Because they have spent their entire lives trying to force open doors that God never intended for them to walk through. Man was not created to be the master of his own destiny. That is the great lie of the enemy. From the very beginning, Satan deceived humanity into believing that they could define their own path, make their own rules, and live apart from God's perfect plan. But look at the consequences. Sin entered the world, and with it came pain, suffering, and separation from the presence of God. Mankind has been wandering ever since, trying to find their way back to what was lost. And yet, instead of surrendering to the one who holds the keys to every door, people continue to trust in themselves, thinking they can achieve what only God can give. But listen to me, you were never meant to live that way. You were not created to fight and claw your way through life, desperately trying to make things happen on your own. No! You were created to walk in obedience and trust before the Lord, knowing that He alone holds the power to open and close the doors that matter. If you want doors to open, if you want the path before you to be clear, if you want to walk in divine favor, then you must stop striving and start surrendering. There is power in those words, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. That is not a phrase of weakness. It is a declaration of strength. It is a statement that shifts the weight of responsibility from your shoulders to God's. It is a confession that acknowledges that He knows better than you, that His ways are higher than yours, and that His plans for you are far greater than anything you could imagine. The problem is that surrender is not easy. The flesh resists it. Pride fights against it. The enemy whispers lies, telling you that if you give up control, you will lose everything. But that is the greatest deception of all. The truth is, the moment you let go and trust in God, you gain everything. The moment you stop forcing your way through life and allow Him to lead, the right doors will open at the right time.